Hey, what's up, squad? From Reach Suite, I'm Colin Smith, and you are listening to Cold Ones. It's the podcast with chilly questions and even colder ice cream. Today, we're joined by Andy Hershey. You know him as the Chief Revenue Officer at Sovos, former CRO of NS1, which was recently acquired by IBM. Congrats. And 10-year sales leader at Splunk pre-IPO. Andy, welcome to the show.
Colin, thank you. Great to be here. My favorite food, ice cream.
Yeah, so what are we working with? We before we jump in, sorry to ask because I don't want to give away the second one yet, but we're gonna do two separate parts of the show. The show is always broken down into two parts. First one is rapid fire personal. Jump into who is Andy Hershey, what makes you you, and then we're gonna jump into some professional, and that's what everyone's really here. They want to know how has Andy become the success story that he has. And in each segment, we're gonna have a little bit of different ice cream. So as always, we do strategically select the ice cream for you, Andy. I don't just send something to you without thinking about it. So for the first one here, we chose the Talenti chocolate chip. It's a coffee chocolate chip. And I think, I was going through thinking about all of our times together, and what struck me as really unique about our conversation is that you were actually a part of Reach Suite before it was Reach Suite. You were with me chatting at Northside Social Coffee Shop before we even incorporated, before I had actually quit my full-time job to take this leap of entrepreneurship. And if it wasn't for Northside Coffee Shop and our early conversations, I don't know if I would have done it. And so I thought a coffee flavored ice cream would be appropriate for us, man.
Well, thank you. Thanks for the kind words, and you've come a long way. I'm impressed where you've come since that first time we met at Northside. So congrats to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. All right, so quick rapid fire. I'm gonna pull up my question list here. There's some fun ones, man, and it's just humanizing. Like, I speak with, I have some
Can I eat
great.
my ice cream as we talk, Colin? Is that okay?
Oh
I
yeah,
hate
get
to
in there,
watch it
man.
melt. Yeah, I hate to see it melt in front of me.
And make sure the folks get a good visual of what we're working with. Oh yeah, the coffee ice cream. I like that bowl too, Andy.
Thank you.
So I always say I think it's important to humanize, right? Folks like yourself, and a lot of the leaders that we're bringing onto the Cold Ones podcast are, people that not every audience member has the opportunity to get to know. And so this is just purpose. The purpose of this is to humanize before we jump into the intense stuff. So I'm gonna go rapid fire. Answer as much or as little as elaborative as you want, or is not, up to you. Morning person or night owl, Andy?
Um, Morning person. I get up at 5:45 every morning, do a workout in the basement gym. Great way to start the day. I do some weights, some cardio, do some Peloton. If anyone's in Peloton, I'm Rockstar Andy. Feel free to friend me. But great way to get the dopamine fix and get the day moving early in the morning.
Rockstar Andy?
Rockstar Andy.
Is there an underscore? I'll put that in the show notes.
Okay.
Can add you. You're gonna go for like overnight viral or something from like LinkedIn sales leaders following you on.
I know I love Peloton though. I've been using it for 5 years now, and weights, bike, cardio, everything. It's stretching, all that. It's been great. So love Peloton. So look forward to making more connections on Peloton.
Shout out to Peloton. All right. Question number two. What kind of car are you driving these days, Andy?
These days, I am driving a Tesla Model Y, all black,
Blacked out rims?
blacked out rims.
All right. What do the young kids call that? Murdered out? They black the whole thing. Is
Yeah,
it?
you tell me. Yeah.
Is it? Are you doing like the normal black? Have you matted it? Is it a matte black? What are we talking?
No, it's just normal black, but I do like the black rims. They're pretty cool.
Yeah, man. Model Y. Is that the? Okay, that's like the sporty sedan. Last one. Funniest celebrity encounter.
Well, I socialize with all the celebrities, so there's tons. I got to pick which one's the best. Um, yeah, actually, so when we here in Arlington, one of our down the street from us, across the street from us, got to be friends with these neighbors, and it's both when my wife was pregnant with one of our children, and they got pregnant, and we just got to be good friends with them. And it turns out they raised this child, and we spent time with them, etc. And they really wanted him to go into acting and be a performer and so forth. It's really interesting because now he is a star of a primetime TV show, Young Sheldon. So that's probably my craziest celebrity story. Knew Ian from the very beginning, and really impressed with what he's done with his career at a young age.
Holy smokes. So young Sheldon was one of your the kid. What's his name?
Ian Armitage.
And he grew up here in Arlington. That's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
exactly. Yeah, I'll show you his house sometime.
That's pretty funny, man. You know, there's actually quite a bit of um I've learned there are quite a bit of actors and actresses from the Arlington, Virginia area. I don't know why.
Yeah, it's
And
funny. Our next door neighbors were like this. It's really old, like Warren Beatty and Shirley MacLaine. They lived in the house next door, and then Sandra Bullock, went to Washington Lee High
yeah,
School. So you're right. There's a lot of
yeah.
them.
Yeah, Sandra Bullock and then I think um Tina Fey is from this area.
Oh, wow.
I know she is, and she went to UVA as well. Yeah, there's like quite a bit of interesting. Um,
Cool.
all right, Andy. Well, thanks for doing a little personal rapid fire, man. We're gonna jump into the fun stuff here, the professional questions, and learning a little bit more about your background and what has gotten you to where you are today. So, ice cream number two. Um, so this one's kind of this. What do we? It's a stacked cookie dough, right? So I was saying, so I was thinking, right, we always grab two. And I came across the stacked cookie dough and I thought, um, you've had a pretty long career in sales from Splunk at 10 years through NS1 through going into, IBM and then Sovos. And I have to imagine, man, you've had some pretty doughy commission checks over the years. And so I thought, let's get my man Andy some cookie dough ice cream. All right. Um,
Very good.
Good, man. Good. So first questions, this one's about the Splunk IPO. Few people in this world get to work at a company pre and post IPO, right? Especially in the revenue department, which I think is extremely, uh, I think, impacted by that kind of financial decision. Can you tell us a little bit about now that you've had some game footage under your belt, you've seen what it's like working at a public company, you've seen a company going public, and now you've also seen organizations get acquired by private companies. Compare and contrast what changes, especially as a sales and revenue leader, once I joke around and say once your ticker hits Scottrade.
It's funny. So I've worked for 3 companies in the past 23 years. I've been really lucky just to end up with winners, pick some winners. I've been very fortunate. But I would say when it comes to one of the differences, I would say with public companies, I guess I would say, first of all, um, you still have to drive results. I think one of the things that once you're a public company, there's a lot of things that change, but one thing that doesn't is have to drive results, and you get distracted by the stock price and the stock ticker and so forth. So the worst thing you can do is get caught up in the stock price because it goes up and down, and for oftentimes the different direction than you think it will. Sometimes after an earnings call or whatever else, the only thing we can control is the results we can drive. So that's one thing that stays the same in a public or private company. But I think the big thing with public companies is more resources, more people, better brand recognition. And that helps you, especially as a salesperson, because it helps you get higher and broader in an organization. When Splunk went public, it was great because the accounts that I was calling on were the Capital Ones, the Comcast, the Marriott. And it was very easy to call outside of IT, in addition to IT, but calling on a business level because they were reading about Splunk in the Wall Street Journal. They knew the word, and big data at the time was a big phrase and so forth. So I think your brand recognition and resources are definitely more. I think the other thing it's really cool when you go public and you're growing, there's just, at Splunk especially, we grew at such a fast pace that it was exciting. Every couple of years was a change. We changed and pivoted and just going at full speed ahead, whether we're going from point product to platform or on-prem to cloud, focusing on security or IT operations. All these changes we're going through is always so fascinating and fun to go through all those different changes. So to grow to support the market and where we need to go, that high growth was there, and the big thing was the pace of change.
I think Splunk is what one would consider a platform, right? Versus like a point solution, like pretty wide.
Absolutely, absolutely, yes.
And I don't know, I know a little about NS1, but I'd say they're less of a platform just simply due to the amount of years that they've been able to like be in existence, right? Um, can you compare and contrast, or at least share what's the how does having a best-in-class narrower solution like an S1 versus a maybe, and I'm not, implying, but maybe not always best in every class platform, but nonetheless the widespread platform. How does that shift your sales motion? That's a little off the cuff question here that comes to mind, but I think about this a lot.
Yeah, I think two ways. So I think one, I think oftentimes when you're landing new customers, you're solving a pain point, right? A pain point, and that's where a great solution like NS1 comes into play. So we had an incredible customer base, and we were able to land. We had a premium product in the market, and we addressed a real pain that they had, and we landed that way. Splunk was the same way with our core. You know, it was basically we started out being Google for logs. And the basic problem we would solve with Splunk was when their IT applications would go slow and you'd have all these different teams for the network and the infrastructure and the applications pointing fingers to find the silver bullet, you could search all that data together at once with Splunk to find the needle in the haystack and save 90% of the time it would take, et cetera. So that was also the beachhead how we landed. So we never sold Splunk as a platform either. Then once we were in there, we would help them accelerate their time to value and then expand to become a platform and show how the same data is relevant to a wide range of people. So I would say Splunk and NS1 were very similar in how we landed around the pain point, but then a platform like Splunk, we had a strategy to really grow in the organization for a wide range of use cases and become a platform.
Okay, so rather than bundling and packaging everything as one platform, you found that it was or Splunk found it was most effective to go in with your core product as a beachhead and then sell outward from there.
Yeah, land and expand, right? So we
Yeah.
land customers like solving a pain point, then we expand into a platform. Very rarely will we just go to a customer, hey, we have a platform, come buy our platform. We'd have to find that pain point.
Yeah.
So now sometimes there'll be a wide range of use cases when we landed, but more often than not, we land with a specific pain point to quickly get in the door, help them achieve success, and then we would grow within the account to find more points of value in buying centers and personas that could leverage that data in our solution to become a platform.
So a lot of folks in our audience are not quite Splunk in terms of size, but well on their way to becoming a Splunk in terms of size. And they're rapidly adding products. I mean, I'm having conversations a lot actually with sales and marketing leaders who are overcoming challenges as it relates to transitioning from a point solution to a platform, the complexities that come along with how to use shifter messaging, et cetera. Um, do you have any feedback? And it's okay if you don't, but do you have any feedback or insights on how long to wait until you start that expansion motion, and or what indicators are you looking for? How are you finding them to start triggering some of those land, expand, cross sell motions?
So I think that's a really complicated question because I think when you think about mentioned cross sell, for instance, I think there's two paths. I think one is if you're going to keep selling to the same persona and buying center in a company, there's a path, and you basically, in my opinion, you kind of help that persona get value and help them accelerate their time to value and see how they can gain more value. So I think a lot of things you can do around that path. In my opinion, it gets a little trickier when you're selling to a different buying center, a different persona. And I think you understand, like when you have customers that have bought multiple products in that situation, what was their journey like? What's the pattern with the data? And kind of build a sales play and so forth. I think you can also leverage data and do like a propensity to cross sell, looking at the accounts you have in the white spaces, if you will, but also leveraging your internal data about their usage, but also external data you can buy based on what you think are the indicators where customers can actually use the complementary products and use that to guide you as well. Those are obviously very high level general statements, but those are some of the first things that come to mind.
Okay. No, it's helpful to think about. Oh, go ahead.
Especially understanding the customer journey when you have a different persona and how's it different from where you land, I think is super important.
Yeah, yeah, fair enough. I think the land and expand model is one that is underappreciated, probably because not as many companies make it to the point where they can land and expand, so there's not as many heads talking about it. But it's one that there is truly an art and a science to it. So Andy, one thing that has struck me as very inspirational and I admire very much about you since day one is how detail oriented you are when you get into a new organization. And I think when you get into an organization, but then as you're operating, right? Like I remember when we were chatting, a year and a half ago, um, about how you're doing quarterly reviews and auditing stage level conversions. And I mean, you're looking at every single data point you possibly can. Can you walk me through a little bit? Like, do you have a playbook? Do you have a recipe? Like, how does Andy Hershey get into the weeds and start finding inefficiencies that you can optimize to start pulling levers in different directions?
Sure. Yeah, I think there's two aspects to that, and I'll maybe summarize it saying leveraging data, but also context. I think a lot of folks either very data driven or very emotional driven, but I think like a lot of things, the answer is usually in the middle, combination. So the first way I'd say to answer that question is I'd like to look at the different from the time a customer has an inquiry on your website, the customer journey through when we basically take the lead, when they become get a demo, get qualified, they go through a POV, a proposal, all this different inflection points of our sales cycle, and then through when they purchase. And when they purchase, it's not like I think, Colin, one of the challenges is in traditional sales, legacy sales motions. Hey, you purchased, touchdown, I had the PO, because so often we get excited before the deal closes. The salespeople, we get excited when a customer tells us we're going to win the deal. But then we go through legal and procurement, and it's just a burden. We get the deal done and say, yay, let me chase my next deal. I think that's a problem because that impacts adoption. So I think we need to look at all the data from all the inflection points of our sales cycle, but then look at the purchase time as their commitment. That's not the touchdown moment. And how do we get them on board and successful very quickly? So measuring that period of time, and then between the then and the first renewal cycle, and then looking how can we accelerate that and compress that, and look at that renewal cycle as a way to drive an upgrade or an expansion and so forth. So in answer to your question, all those inflection points from the very first inquiry through the expansion in the stages, you can collect data, you can benchmark it, you can compare against yourself historically, looking to see where exactly are the longest stage times from low velocity and the lowest conversion rates. And that'll indicate where to dig into as far as like where you can have the biggest impact. And then, finding out what's going on, what's happening, talking to the team. One of the things we've seen before is we were doing all these POCs, but we were losing them. We're just losing them. And it turned out that we were not doing a very good kickoff call with the customer. We were giving them environment. We were not doing a results presentation. So sometimes things like that, and for us, it made a big difference. We improved our win rate by something like 15, 20%, so our conversion rate. So like things like that, when you have the data that points in the right direction, and also coming to conclusions, just saying the sales team, not positioning this right, or that they're losing deals here because they're doing that. Let's ask the sales team, why not? What are you experiencing as well? And combining that data that you get from the field team, from just like talking in that context with the data you get from the numbers together to figure out not only what's happening, but what can you do that's going to have the biggest impact.
Interesting. And I like that translation from the data to the field and actually sitting down with the reps and talking to them. Is customer success typically reporting into your department from your experience?
At NS1, it did. At Sovos, that's a different group from where I'm now at Sovos.
Okay. I was gonna ask a question on your opinion on customer success being a part of the chief revenue officer's world versus not. And I've been in organizations where it was, and I've been in organizations where it's not. Do you have an opinion you want to share about that, or is there anything that comes up?
You know what I'd say? I think the sales organization overall, we need to be selling with an adoption mindset. Like to me, that's where my focus is right now, especially going back to the earlier point about kind of closing deals and running. So I think the CSM may or may not be, but I think the sales organization, we really need to make sure we have an adoption mindset in sales. I think still it's something that's happening in transition in a lot of organizations, but I think it's still something we want to lean forward on across the board.
You mentioned an example about POV. I imagine that is it sounds like a real world example. You looked in, you noticed, why the heck do we have a low POV conversion, or lower than the benchmark? How did you come to that conclusion? Did you benchmark it against industry average, benchmark it over year? Like give me kind of the granular.
Yeah.
So how did you pick
We'll
that
give you
out?
a real world example. Well, what I was talking about most recently was one example, but another good example was one at Splunk with our cloud business. We saw that we were losing. We were losing in the technical evaluation stage, the proof stage, to two competitors. We were winning like 45% of the deals. We had a very low conversion rate. And when we looked into it, it turns out that our solution just didn't POV very well. We tried it. We as a company, the solution that we had at Splunk at the time was one that was very hard to onboard data into and to really do an effective POC. It required a lot of high touching, getting it into customers' environment and so forth. and we looked into why our competitors were doing so well against us. They were actually shipping appliances out to customer data centers and letting them use it that way, making it very easy. So what we saw was that POV stage that we just did not have it because we were avoiding POCs we call them at the time. We were losing to competitors. What we did was we turned that around and created a prescriptive POV, and we used that and we increased our win rate to 75%. So we just looked at our competitive win rate. That's another data point you can look at as well and understand why. We're losing 40% of the deals, 45% of the deals. What in the world's going on? And then we saw talk to customers, talk to the field. So again, the data told us one thing. Why? Let's talk to the customers. Let's talk to our field reps and SEs. We found out what was happening in more detail, and we put together a response that really changed the game.
That's actually really smart. We always forget about slicing and dicing the data. We just look at it holistically. You need to slice it and dice it by segment, by competitive versus not, by rep, by team, right? I mean, by geography, and that's where you can get really granular. Last question on this front, and I want to move into our final question here, in light of time. What is a prescriptive POV versus a non-prescriptive POV? What does that mean?
Yeah, so I think what prescriptive POV is what we did at Splunk. We call it the Autobahn, and basically, where we changed from going from a non-prescriptive POC, proof of concept. I think the term proof of concept, our software, we don't have to prove the concept. We did to prove the value. So we said POV. We're going to prove it works with your data. So what we did was oftentimes prior to the Autobahn and the prescriptive POVs, rep would basically give the environment with an SE to a customer and let them kind of explore, not even sure what they wanted to see, explore it when they got into it, let it run forever and ever and ever. What we did with our Autobahn program was we created a customer brochure with 13 use cases for security, ops, different areas. And we said, pick 3 or 4 of these use cases. These are best in class, world class use cases. Every security operations center cares about these, et cetera. Each of them actually came with 3 or 4 success criteria with them. So pick this use case, here's your success criteria. And then we had a very prescriptive program where they had 30 days to it and what we did and kind of what they had to do to prepare for it to start and so forth. And so we were very prescriptive and guided them through, and we helped them see value quickly, if it had value or not, as opposed to kind of throwing them an environment and let them, figure it out for themselves. So it saved them time, and it helped us show well, and we did very well. It also got them to use the software, and we'd also often convert that POV environment into production. So it really helped accelerate their time to value because they weren't waiting for the PO to come in and services to come deploy them. They were already personally deployed, and that accelerated their time to the second, third purchase. So it worked out really well.
That's interesting. Okay, so you had isolated 13 use cases, you put 2 to 3 success criteria, and you really guided them, like you said, prescriptive.
Yeah.
Guardrails, right? POV and guardrails. Talk about that a lot at Reach as well. Is there anyone you want to shout out? Is there anyone along your career that you feel like has really helped you to get where you are?
Too many to name. Too many to name. I mean, from my first boss out of college, Bill Cote, through others, OpNet and Splunk. We had great Godfrey Sullivan was our CEO, was phenomenal. Doug Merritt. Just showed what great leadership is. I mean, Tom Schodorf, Bart Finale, Doug May, Anthony Palladino, Pike Reynolds, Christian Smith, Sandra Selkumar, Susan St. Ledger, Frank Demina, Mike Sauer. Just I could go on and on and on and on. Just been very fortunate and grateful for great support and help.
Dude, that's a blessing, man. It's a blessing when you have too many names to even read, right? You have that you've had so much talent in your corner, and that's what you get when you join an organization like Splunk that rocket ships, and NS1 that rocket ships, and now Sovos that's rocket shipping or has rocket ship. So, Andy Hershey, congratulations, you made it through. No brain freezes. I hope you got your fill of ice cream before dinner. Thank you for your time. We're grateful for it as always. And before we go, tell our audience what is going on in Andy's neck of the woods this next year.
Yeah, with Sovos, really excited to be here. We are a really exciting company. Sovos is, if you're not familiar, it's about a $500 million company with over half the Fortune 500 as customers and over 100,000 customers overall. And, we're transforming from selling a point solution to suites and a platform. And we have a compliance cloud solution. It's transforming how larger companies especially are able to do business. And when I say compliance, I'm talking about global tax compliance. We're a SaaS for that. It's a super exciting times. And this whole point product to platform is a transformation that I saw at Splunk. and it was a really good journey and that play, and really excited to see us go execute on it at Sovos. I think it's going to be a very exciting year ahead, and just thrilled to be here.